Sean Hannity's show is simply titled Hannity, but I think it's time for a renaming. It really is the Hillary Clinton horror show. Let's call it the Clinton Scandal Hour, because night after night after night, Hannity delights in supposed Clinton wrongdoing, seizing on old stories and spinning them into huge scandals. Vox recently called him the media's top conspiracy theorist. Now, my theory is that Hannity focuses on the Clintons partly so he doesn't have to deal with the daily Trump-related controversies. Lately, it's also been a convenient diversion from the Roy Moore scandal. At the end of one of his Clinton bashing segments this week, Hannity kind of randomly said this.
By the way, I have sources saying all of us are being surveilled illegally, just in case you're interested. Just telling you. Anyway,
Sean, that's a huge story. You're under surveillance? By who? The Trump administration? You know, kooky sound bites like that would sometimes go unnoticed, if not for Media Matters. Media Matters is a left-wing group that monitors right-wing media. The group flagged that video clip and many, many more as part of an ongoing anti-Hannity campaign. Right now, it's promoting an ad boycott. It says, sign up to join the effort to encourage Hannity's advertisers to stop financially supporting his propaganda. Let's talk about that with the group's president, Angelo Carasone. He joins me now here in New York. Angelo, what's the status of this ad boycott? You announced it several months ago. Have you succeeded in peeling off any advertisers?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we have statements from 30 companies that have committed that they're not going to advertise on Sean Hannity's program.
But were they advertising to begin with?
All of those companies were actually advertising to begin with. And then there are many more companies that never started in the first place because they say this is too volatile, there's too much potential controversy associated with it. And I think we've already seen the financial effects. In September alone, even before the latest flare-up, Fox News' ad revenue was down 17%, which is rather atypical for the market as a whole. And it very much dovetails with the massive exodus of advertisers in the first wave in August.
Hannity says he's against any ad boycott. Why do you think it's appropriate to try to take away any commentator's advertisers?
I don't like it at all.
Then why are you doing it?
Well, because I think at some point you are forced to do it, right? Because I think most commentators work for a company, and those companies have guidelines and policies and procedures that they force and have and police themselves. They have their own commentators adhere to a standard. No other network would let their personalities go out there and do the kinds of destructive and reckless things that Sean Hannity does. But when you're faced with an entity that doesn't have any accountability, you have two choices: do nothing and continue to endure the destructive consequences of it, or appeal to a higher power. In this case, it's the advertisers. And I would remind everybody that that was required in the case of Bill O'Reilly. That, Fox News had re-signed his contract and had no intention, even knowing all the things that he had done, of forcing him off the air. It needed to be forced. And I think
they say they do some, but not all. But with Bill O'Reilly, we saw an immediate advertiser exodus.
Yes.
To the point where there weren't enough ads to put in the time slot. We're not seeing that with Hannity. So how successful is this really?
I think that for me, it's always been a long game. I'm not interested in sort of a short burst flare up. It is obviously enormously effective. That's why Sean Hannity is complaining about it. I think it's reflected in their bottom line numbers. I think it is more comparable to when Glenn Beck left Fox News, that you sort of reach a critical mass of advertisers that don't want to be associated with the program anymore. And as a result of that, the ad rates start to decline. The quality of the advertisers willing to advertise on that program goes down. And it no longer becomes commercially sustainable or viable. And I feel like we're at a very critical point there with Hannity, so just about reaching that place.
You're a liberal group. Do you fear that if this works, Rachel Maddow's show and other liberal shows will be targeted?
I think that would be radically unfair, right? Because it isn't about his perspective or ideology. I think that Tucker Carlson is gross. I find his content odious, but we're not leading an advertiser campaign against him. Because I think part of this is that, and I would remind everybody that Media Matters isn't out there smashing Keurigs. And we're not calling for boycotts of these companies, mostly because it's not necessary. A lot of times all we have to do is talk to them and show them what it is that their advertisers are running alongside of. And they're making a business decision. And that business decision is to avoid Sean Hannity's volatility. And that was reflected in this weekend. They just don't want it. I mean, there are advertisers that left in August that when the Keurig thing flared up, came back to me and said, you were right.
Here's what Fox told me in a statement for this segment. They said, this intimidation effort is nothing more than political opportunism based on deceit. Sean Hannity hosts the #1 program in cable news because millions of Americans make the decision to join him every night. And the audience relationship is stronger than ever. So I think, Angela, what they're saying there is, this is not a repeat of O'Reilly. We're not going to drop O'Reilly. We know the audience loves Hannity.
Well, they're not saying anything about his advertisers in that statement.
That's true. I have asked repeatedly
that's right.
if advertisers have withdrawn and there's no comment from
And
Fox.
that's because, I mean, publicly we know that they are withdrawing, and I find it interesting that Fox News thinks that I'm the one that's intimidating them based off of deceit, because that seems to be how it is that they function in the information landscape.
Well, let's take a look at how Hannity's been talking about you lately. I know this is uncomfortable to even put on screen,
Sure.
but let's show part of what Hannity had on the air this week. He continues to call you racist, anti-gay. At some point, I think he's brought up anti-Semitic issues, implying that you're anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
How does it feel to see this on television?
Well, this in particular is rather hurtful because I am gay. And I have my boyfriend and now husband, who for a while we weren't allowed to get married, of 14 years, is Jewish. And so right on face, it's sort of a ridiculous sort of jab to sort of come at me in obviously on the most personal way. And we see that reflected all the time with not just Sean Hannity, but the right wing as a whole. They always go after people's strengths or characteristics. So that is, they think, a sore spot. I find it to be a reflection of who they are and how they think that's, I don't see that to be a valid criticism at all. Obviously, I'm not homophobic. And
He was screaming at you on Twitter this morning. I wonder, has he ever tried to book you on Hannity?
No, he hasn't. And
because I would love to watch that. I really would.
I don't think he would do it. And if he would do it, and like Fox News has had in the past, every time they've offered to book anyone from us, they've never allowed it to be a live interview. And I think that reflects a lot about the way and shows Fox News' intentions. So no, he hasn't tried to do it. He'll have on Roy Moore. He'll have on Bill O'Reilly even after he's fired from Fox News. I think at this point, though, we've crossed that threshold. I wouldn't want to appear on his program. I'm telling advertisers not to associate with Sean Hannity because of his volatility, his recklessness, his ability and willingness to go out there and undermine and attack women that speak out in this moment of all times. So I wouldn't want to actually elevate that show by appearing on it. But in the past, maybe it would have been an appropriate way to engage.